Hello, and welcome to The Black Unconscious,
a mental health podcast about living, coping, and thriving while Black.
I'm Raquel Martin, a PhD candidate in medical and clinical psychology.
And I'm Dr. Justin Hopkins, a licensed clinical psychologist.
This podcast is not meant to be a substitute for a therapeutic relationship with a licensed therapist.
Thank you for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy the show. Hey, and welcome to The Black Unconscious. We are your hosts. I am Dr. Justin Hopkins.
And I'm Raquel Martin.
And our episode title for today is Boundaries, Where to Draw the Line. So We're going to be talking all about boundaries in relationships. Why do boundaries matter? Why is it hard to maintain boundaries? How do you develop those boundaries in different networks, whether it be friends, family, or otherwise, including romantic relationships? And then how to maintain healthy boundaries. And this is a topic that I think applies to so many people in so many different situations, and it's a complex one. So we want to get into the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, so why boundaries matter.
Right. So that's the jumping off part. Like why even address this? Raquel, you want to go first?
Yes. So I think that a lot of times boundaries matter because when they're crossed, if the person doesn't know that the boundaries were there, you can kind of be like angry towards them or resentful towards them. They're also really important for mental health, but I think the biggest thing is it's really important to state them. And then they matter because they're good for you to just be a normal person. Like if you're working 24 hours a day, a boundary that needs to be set is that you can't work 24 hours a day. Like maybe some people can, but I'm not one of those people. So I think it can ruin the quality of like all relationships.
Yeah.
If you're not mindful of your boundaries.
Right.
And like, other people's boundaries.
Right. Well, moderation matters. Is that saying like all things in moderation, I think can apply at times. But it's basically, it manages the quality of things, right? When you have boundaries with other people, but also, like you said, with work and things that you have to do. I think the other thing, when it comes to relationships, right, boundaries very literally help you with separating yourself from another person. And I don't mean just in like the physical material sense, but I literally mean there are some times when we have relationships in which people are so close, literally how they feel and the things that they say to you then impact how you feel, the way that you feel about yourself, and the things that you outwardly express. And that can happen sometimes when people are too close. So literally, when people are too close, and we'll get into also like boundaries sometimes can be too rigid and people are maybe too distant, but when people are too close, their self-talk can kind of often, they can internalize what other people say to them to such a degree that their self-talk actually mimics that of another person. They start to feel how the other person's feels. So boundaries actually separate one psyche from another, oneself from another, but also they allow another person to experience intimacy and allow somebody into their lives so that they can enjoy closeness and bond. And so it's really about just like managing the quality of a relationship. And that's pretty much what boundaries do. Yeah.
And then they can also lead to like the lack of boundaries or not acknowledging what your boundaries are can lead to just bigger issues with people that may not be the other person's fault, right? Like if your boundary is that you need a certain amount of one-on-one time, like you need a certain amount of time with just you, and you never made that aware to the other person, and then they cross that boundary, and then you kind of get angry towards them or resent them. Like, yes, the one aspect is that the boundary was crossed. Two, the biggest issue is that you're getting upset with that person for something that they didn't know they were doing wrong. So it can really negatively impact the relationship. Like you're having this resentment towards them and this anger towards them, but you didn't let them know that that was the line and that they crossed it.
Right.
And part of that is the fact of communication. Part of that can also be that you are not actually really aware or self-aware to know that like that's what the issue is. Right. Like you have like this resentment, you want space, but it could just be because to me, it's a hard rule that I just need, I don't know, Sundays and the afternoon off, like away from everyone. And that doesn't mean that I dislike you at all. It just means that this is something that's important to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you can't always get mad at people when they cross a line that they didn't know was there.
Right.
It's like an imaginary line. It's like the freaking equator. Like, how am I supposed to know?
And sometimes for ourselves, like we don't even know that there is a line that is there, right? And that's why, like, being self-aware and having deciding what your boundaries are, knowing what your boundaries are up front can be really, really important because there are different boundaries that one can cross, right? There can be emotional boundaries where someone like hurts you emotionally, or physical boundaries when someone is infringing on your space, or God forbid, also hurting you physically. Or there could be just relationship boundaries where people want to like be really, really close or really, really distant, or hot and cold, and neither of those feel quite right. So I think what boundaries also do is they give you the best chance to fulfill whatever sort of needs you might want in a relationship or otherwise. So, for example, like you said, Raquel, right? Like if you are in a relationship even with a friend or even a spouse, right?
Yeah,
Like
it could be with anybody. It could be friend, spouse, family member, just a relationship in general.
right. Sometimes you don't know that there's a boundary in there until someone has infringed upon it,
And you're
then
pissed.
you're like mad, and
Yeah.
then you're like, but they didn't even know, like they
They
didn't even know that
and it's
was
not
a
their
thing.
fault. It's both of your faults.
Right. Like for example, if someone like a friend makes a joke about something that you're insecure about,
Oh yeah.
that's like a boundary cross, and then you're like, damn, ouch, like. Yo, like you
I'm
really
sure
like.
I probably made that mistake.
You
No, I
probably-
actually think my friends are pretty vocal, so I know like that's the
Yeah.
line that you don't cross.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, or some of your friends just don't care.
Yeah.
like I think my friends, we make like harsh jokes about relationships that went terribly wrong way too soon.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, we just broke up yesterday,
Yeah.
and like it's like it's not a good joke.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's important to know that stuff, right? But also like there will inevitably be ways in which people kind of step on each other's toes and like hurt one another because people are imperfect and people are also different. So
Yeah, that's natural.
We're not always gonna align, but it's helpful to know for yourself like what some of those lines are, and it doesn't have to be necessarily a big line where like if you cross this line you're gonna end the relationship. But we're talking about those.
It can be though.
It can be.
Those are okay too though.
Well, those are really important.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have those, then it can get like abusive, right? Or
it could just be like something as simple as like what's the Voldemort's friend? His line with his wife is that he doesn't eat dinner.
Voldemort. She's talking about Mike Pence.
The Cheetos.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm like,
yes, his
is
boundary
evil.
is that he doesn't have one-on-one meetings with other women.
yeah, and if that line is crossed, that's probably like that's a hard no for his wife, right?
Or for him. I can't remember who it was for. But it is just so funny. It always catches me off guard when you refer to Mike Pence as Voldemort.
Dude looks like a Dementor. Like he looks like he has no soul. It really it really freaks me out looking at him on TV.
He is kind of the one who shall not be named because we don't talk about him. He just tries to stay out of the public eye, But yeah, he has this really hard line boundary about like meeting one-on-one with other women. I think we could and we have before gotten into all of the nuances about why that is a thing for him and wondering what that is about. I think
it's probably because he assaults women all the time. And his lawyers are like, well, this just has to be a rule because we can't keep paying these people off.
I don't know what that man does, but it is odd. It's at least seems a little bit awkward to me that is a thing. But whatever the case may be, like, right, like he, I'm sure, thinks that is like his way of maintaining boundaries and that are to him appear healthy. Although I'm not sure what it says about his beliefs about women and relationships with women.
Yeah, I think everyone has certain. What's the boundary I have? I don't check my work emails on the weekend.
Yeah.
I also like at 10 o'clock the ringer goes off.
Yeah, you turn it off on your phone.
Yeah, because like who and I have a house phone, so if there's an emergency, there's a house phone. There's also like a boundary where like if someone calls me in the middle of the night in the house phone, I'm answering, or any phone, I'm answering the question like, what's wrong? Where do I need to bail you out? Because there's clearly something wrong, right? Like that's just, and you know what? That's just like a trigger. I just do every time. It's like, what's wrong?
Is that the first question?
It is. I ask what's wrong. Like,
well, also like,
it's like I only have so much cash on me. What's the bail? I'm like, what'd you do? Just tell me where I need to be.
Right, but there's that precedent that if someone's going to reach out to you beyond like certain hours, then it needs to be an emergency
or
right?
a double call.
Yeah.
You ever have like a bat signal call?
Yep.
Someone calls me once, but then they call me again, It's a bad signal. Or
Yeah.
this one time, Justin sent multiple text messages. It was really just updates on the podcast, but it just freaked me out that
And
he
I
sent
was
like
also in like I was in a work mode.
he was in a work
I was
mode.
really like obsessed and like.
And it was like 6 messages back to back. So when I opened it, I automatically was just like, "Oh my god, something has burned down." But it was just updates.
It was like stream of conscious.
Yes, my first response was like, "Do not ever send me this many messages again, unless you are bleeding out. Like, don't." It just certain stuff is just like, what?
Yeah, because it was a trigger for you, actually.
Yeah, I'm always worried about something going wrong with people.
Yeah,
that's the only reason why I answer unknown numbers, because I'm afraid one of my friends are in jail. And my friends aren't intense enough to be in jail, but like I'm also not a person.
Wait, that was like the first thing. That was like the first thought. Like they're in jail.
Yeah, I don't think that you get in jail just because you did something wrong. One of my friends could have gone to a protest or something.
That is very true.
And they got arrested. Yeah. And all my friends are real social justice. So I'm like, I mean, I don't think you go to jail just because you did stuff wrong.
Right.
My first thought is jail.
Yeah. No, that's real. That's real. See, at first I was just thinking that you were thinking, oh, my friends did something wrong, like they ended up in jail.
No, but I don't think you end up in jail just because you did something wrong.
No, that's a good
point
to
with
clarify.
Like the number of protests happening these days.
Yeah.
The number of people getting stopped for just random shit and getting thrown in. You know, like. I mean,
obviously, yeah.
And I've had the same phone for so long that people actually remember my phone number.
Right. But I think, like for some people, like when the boundaries of like normal communication across and someone's reaching out to you at like an ungodly hour, like of course you go to that like worst case scenario where there could be a catastrophe. And so I think it's and if someone's just like actually you pick up that phone, it's like 1 a.m. and they're just like, hey, how's it going?
Dude,
that's a boundary crossing. You've crossed the boundary.
What is wrong with you?
So
I would actually be like, what about what you know about me would make you think that's okay? Why would you think I'm awake?
Sure.
Why? Yeah. Why do you hate me? What did I do?
Do you not want me to sleep?
But do you like what did I do to deserve this?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. But you know, I do think like so there are boundaries that are like this relationship is going to end if you do X, Y, Z.
Let's think of it like a brick. Okay. Let's think about it as like materials. So like that's a brick boundary, right? Like you got a brick. Okay.
Good.
What's something that's more malleable?
I don't know. I do use like this phrase of like boundary crossings though often, especially when I'm working in relationships. But
yeah, I bet.
As a metaphor, I'm not really sure in terms of like.
Because I normally say stuff is like, oh, that's a firm no. Like that's not a soft like, oh, convince me. No.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so we could do like a wall versus like what's something, what's
a fence.
A fence. Okay.
A wall versus.
Well,
a fence.
no.
You know this is like terrible language considering the timing of this racist ass wall that's wanting to be built. But you know what? This actually does work as a metaphor because like I think right like some lines that you draw like have to be like a wall in order to protect your sense of safety and comfort and trust in a relationship. For example, like physical violence is like that's a wall for me. Like you cannot permeate that. There's no way. Like those gate fences though. Like boundaries are only good in so much as as it is fully your decision how much you allow something to cross through or not, right? And so you might have those break boundaries. And to me, like break boundaries, those wall boundaries, those are like actually easier to uphold because to you they might seem, depending on who you are, whatever your break boundaries are, because it's so obvious when someone has done something like that is really, really wrong to you.
Yeah, you need a sledgehammer to break through that.
Right. You know for sure, without a doubt, like this is not right. Those other boundaries though, those more like boundaries where like maybe someone stepped on your toes a little bit, or they hurt your feelings just a bit, or they disappointed you like a little bit here.
Ooh, slime. Okay, I'm sorry. I was thinking this the whole time. Like, what about slime?
Slime as a metaphor for boundary? Because
it's like flexible.
Yeah.
You can you have to do more force to like push your hands through it. It's gross.
You know what I end up thinking about? Like, this is gonna be like super nerdy. You know how like some cells, some neurons only let certain molecules in?
Done. Okay.
Yeah, the cell membrane, right? Like even with medication, right? Like certain medications only go to certain cells because the texture of those molecules fit the receptors of those cells. So all cells don't let everything through, right? They only let some things through.
Which makes sense because certain boundaries set for one person aren't the same as certain
Right.
things. Like,
But a cell that lets nothing through will die, and a cell that lets everything in will also die.
I like that though.
It's a good
I
metaphor,
don't care
right?
how nerdy that is.
And it's cells are part of us.
Cells are part of us.
Yo, that
They
was on
make
the
us up.
spot, off the top.
That was pretty
the
good,
dome.
Dr. Hopkins.
Yo, one of these days we're gonna get an applause button and we're gonna have sound effects.
That sounds really high tech, and I don't think we're there.
We're not. But I think the principle holds, right? Like
no, the principle holds. I think that's a really good point.
We have to be mindful of what we're letting in.
I like the fact that you said if you let everything in, you die. If you let nothing in, you die.
Yeah, you do.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I like
same
that.
case
I
for
like
ourselves.
That. Yeah. Okay.
And that's why I was also thinking about like a wall and a fence too, because a wall lets nothing in, and some boundaries need to be walls, but some also need to be fences where they're not so diffuse that nothing gets in, but you can kind of like there's a little bit that gets through. But I think the cell membrane metaphor fits the best.
Of course, because it does. I like it.
Yeah.
But it's so easy to say that, but there's so many things that like get in the way.
Yes. So
of like setting an appropriate boundary or keeping it, because you may set it and then
So let's get into that. Like, why is it so hard for people to maintain appropriate boundaries?
I think it's uncomfortable to even set a boundary sometimes. If you're not used to having boundaries set. Right? Like if you're used to being in an environment where there are no boundaries, it's hard to set that up yourself because it's not something you're used to.
Sure. I think I also tend to think that like people end up feeling bad or feeling like guilty for certain boundaries, or end up like questioning themselves whether like something was a boundary or not. For example, if like someone, I keep going back to this because I feel like it's one of those things that people debate quite often with themselves. Like if someone said something or did something that hurt your feelings or that upset you, right? Let's talk about like that example that we used earlier, right? Like a friend who made a joke that's way too soon, way too close, and or touches on one of your insecurities.
Yeah.
Right. Like for example, if you just broke up with a loved one and your friend makes a joke about
I know it's not funny, but this is something we would all do.
Yeah.
And be like, "Oh, you mad? You mad? I'm mad because he was an idiot." Like in this, it's just which is terrible.
But you're not there yet. But maybe you're not there yet to like feel that way about them.
Nope, you're not.
So, but right, like so a person in that situation might be like, "Damn, like." That was really fucked up, or that really hurt my feelings.
They would probably say that exactly if they felt comfortable, right? What if they didn't feel comfortable saying that?
To themselves internally.
Yeah.
They might, right? But I think a lot of people might end up in the situation where they're just like, well, maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe they didn't really intend it for me to be hurt.
Or maybe I'm being sensitive. I feel like a lot of people go to that like, am I tripping?
Right.
Like maybe it wasn't that deep, but it's like if your automatic trigger is like a feeling, like if you felt hurt by it, then you felt hurt by it.
Right. I guess the thing, right? This is where it gets tricky because then there's like intent versus impact. Like there's people's intentions, but intention doesn't really do much to determine the impact of the action.
It doesn't, and it I feel like it comes more into play later when you're able to address it with that person and they're talking about and they're able to apologize or something and address their intent. But whether or not you meant to hurt my feelings, you hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
So that's the impact, right? But the intent, that comes. I feel like that comes up later with like problem solving or like trying to resolve it so it doesn't happen again.
Right.
But
maybe, yeah.
No matter what, like my feelings were hurt. Like no matter what, I'm upset, and feelings aren't right or wrong. So that's my response. But it really only comes down. It doesn't come in until later.
Yeah. I think so, and I do think every person has to decide like what is it worth it for you to try to address it with that person, and what do you know about their capacity to kind of listen and be receptive to those things so that you can get a favorable response and resolve some things. I mean, all those things are like I think factor into whether people want to bring those things up. But when there is some sort of like discomfort that's generated after an interaction, there is a boundary there that's crossed. And I don't think people necessarily look at those like smaller boundaries all the time.
Yeah.
But I think self-questioning definitely gets in the way of maintaining certain boundaries or addressing a situation when a boundary has been crossed.
Self-questioning and then other people questioning you too, right? Like,
sure.
Okay, so like, so I heard so now you're upset, you know, like it's one thing, like the way you question yourself, but when if it's one person, or especially someone who you care about, or even someone you don't, like when they're questioning you, trying to set a limit, it's harder to stick to it, I believe. Like one of the issues would be like, and we're going to talk more about like the different aspects of setting boundaries, but like with parents, right? Like the issues with setting boundaries with parents sometimes is you have a sense of obligation because you would not be here if it wasn't for this person.
Right.
So it's hard to be like, no, I actually have to do work. I do not want to come over because I do know that this is I need to get this done. Or I don't know. No, I do not want to be set up with this person. This is mad inappropriate. Or no, I do not want to. Even something simple as I don't want to go to church because for real, I'm not really feeling that right now. Like I don't really because there's just you don't want to be disrespectful.
Yeah.
Like you don't want to be rude. There's a sense of obligation because it's a hierarchy. Whether you're an adult or not, like no matter what, you're someone's child. So there's a hierarchy when it comes to parents.
Yeah, this is a really, really common dynamic, I think, and that sense of obligation, I think, really. It buddies up with that feeling of guilt, right? Because then it's like if you don't do X, Y, Z, A, B, C, then you are not being a good son, a good daughter, good parent, or good cousin, good niece, nephew, aunt, uncle. Like it does play on right, that I think for families there's a lot of like there can be a lot of obligation to maintain certain dynamics that you've always grown up with, and there is that hierarchy. It plays on that kind of like hierarchy in terms of authority in families. I've actually worked with several people who have these kind of relationships with their parents where their parents are typically wanting them to do and be certain things, right, or be available at certain times, well into their like late 20s and early 30s or even 40s, and family is calling on them, and it never feels right? It never feels right to disappoint a parent, a mom or a dad. If you grew up with loving parents, and if you were fortunate enough to have parents who generally did what was right by you, it never feels right to put up a boundary and disappoint a parent that has, for the most part, been a good presence in your life.
But it gets easier the more you do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like everything gets easier the more you do it. Like it's never going to feel 100% amazing, but the amount of space that you protected in that moment of setting that boundary feels great afterwards. Mm-hmm. And it gets easier the more you do it.
Yeah, I think so. And I think the unfortunate truth is that like we all will disappoint at times. Like we all do, because we're imperfect. But a lot of times we try to resist that so much, right? The idea of like, especially disappointing like a parent or other family members who are older than us, that we end up doing things and being in situations over and over and over again that we really don't want to do, where we really don't want to be, whether it be going to church, like you said, or
and not just church, just a whack, bigoted, patriarchal, like just don't vibe with me kind of church.
Yeah,
yeah. Like you have specific events where it's like everyone's going to this church, and it's like,
it's not for me, dog.
The pastor's a bigot though, so I kind of don't want to go.
Right. But you end up going because
it's Christmas and it's New Year and you have to go.
Yeah. And if you don't, then what's the feeling? Like what's the outcome of that?
Why, like what makes you, like why do you feel like that you can just not do this one thing? I'm not asking you for much.
Right.
That's always the thing, right?
Yeah.
I'm not asking you to do much. Like I'm just asking you to come in here and go against what you believe.
Right.
What's the problem?
Yeah.
And it's not even just going to events. I hear this a lot around Thanksgiving and a lot of holidays with patients. Like they have to be around that one relative that really is just against everything they believe.
Yeah.
And it's not, and the boundary is this person is rude. This person is awful. This person doesn't accept who I am. This person doesn't even understand gender. Doesn't even, like, he only thinks in gender norms. This person is inappropriate. This person behaved to me terribly, but I just got to sit there and take it because that's my uncle or that's my aunt. And it's like, but being around this person is awful. Like, this is a firm boundary. I try not to be around people like this in my real life. And we have Thanksgiving and I got to be around it. That's why holidays are so hard for most people.
Yeah. Right.
If they have family, like you have a family member who you just like, man, I can't freaking stand this mofo. He rude as hell. He always call me fat. Like he's always being real racist. He over here talking about like, I don't know, not understanding why someone chooses to be gay. Like just stupid stuff that you're just like, as a person, I choose not to be around judgmental, uneducated people. But I mean, you can't choose your family, so it's hard. I feel like that's a boundary that's crossed a lot in family.
Yeah.
And you just have to take it because you're the youngest or you're a child.
Well, that's how does it come to that though? It's kind of like, right, like,
because everyone else takes it.
Yeah, and I think that's what ends up happening. Is like people feel like, well, I just have to, right? It's so I think that's the thing that's so common for a lot of folks is like they end up feeling like, well, I just have to do it because they are family, because like my family doesn't ask me for much, because, and see that's the right, that's that like self-questioning. I think that comes into play too. Self-questioning, the guilt, the obligation, it all kind of swirls together to make your boundaries perhaps more diffuse than you would like them to be. And so really, when you hear yourself like kind of saying like, well, maybe they're not asking for much, I mean, I would say like one needs to, and I'm skipping ahead a little bit here.
Well, skip ahead. They don't know our outline. Go where you want to go.
Well,
where is the conversation taking you, Justin?
Well, I'm just thinking about like how people end up in those situations and like why, and how you get out of them, because the reality is like it does cost quite a bit.
Yeah, it costs my soul.
Right. And that's you're so like
it sounds so dramatic, but like being in a space where I'm around like a bunch of people who are not accepting, who are rude, who are just it's a visceral response. Like my heart is beating fast.
That's the exact
I'm sitting
word.
here thinking about how to leave. It damages my soul.
Yeah.
Family or not.
Yeah.
I'm a person, you're a person. And if you were not family, I will be cussing you out because you're a moron. Like it's just some people, some people just have really antiquated views. That's exhausting for me. When you don't choose friends to be like that, like I'm not going to choose a bigoted friend. I'm not going to choose a racist friend. I'm not going to choose like a friend who I don't know, isn't respectful of like the way I choose to live my life. But then I go to this one event and I got to respect that in you. Right. Why? How is that fair? Right. This is who I am.
Right. That was like soul was literally the word I was thinking about, because it eats at your soul, like, and so it costs quite a bit, right? The alternative may be to like kind of you might feel like to confront or to disappoint someone, right? Disappointing the family members who are asking you to be around those racist, bigoted family members, the ones that offend you,
or just stupid. Some people aren't just racist and bigoted. Some people are just like.
Right.
What?
Right.
What do you mean?
But in order to like not be there, it would take you kind of being willing to say, no, I'm not going, and kind of putting up that boundary, knowing that boundary is directly against what the person who you care about is asking you for.
Yeah, and then you get termed the troublemaker. Like, right, so-and-so's going to say something. Which, honestly, that's always me. Right. Just because.
Really? Is it?
It is. Well, and it will always be me, because I don't feel like I should have to, like, hold that in. Yeah. I'm sure there's situations where I hold a certain amount of stuff in, but if I have to be around you for a certain amount of time, nah. Yeah. Because it's uncomfortable. Why do I have to be uncomfortable? Why do I have to be so uncomfortable in my intellect when you are so why do I have to be uncomfortable in my intellect when you are so comfortable in your stupidity? You get to be comfortable. I am not. That's not fair. Yeah. Like, so let's talk about this or not. There's always a limit where you decide, like, and that's where the intellectual conversation has ended. I don't want to sit here and be arguing with a fool, because when you look at him, you don't know which one's the fool.
Right, from the outside looking in.
But people are just, that can just be annoying, and I don't want to deal with it. It's also different in different environments. So we're talking about family, right? You got work too. Mm-hmm. I feel like there are a lot of boundaries in work. Like, for example, there are certain topics I prefer not to talk about at work. Yeah. Like race stuff, or anytime there's something about politics, I know my views, but I don't think it's necessary to know that. But sometimes people will push that when somebody says something stupid, and that's a boundary. And it's just like, what do I do? And what if it's your boss? Right. What if it's your teacher? What if it's your advisor? Right. What if it's your coworker? Even if it's someone on your same level, it could be annoying. Like, how do you decide? Like, this is the boundary I'm just not going to cross.
Or what's more is what's happening when you're sitting in a meeting and someone is spouting political views that actually do eat at your soul.
And right now, given the current climate,
that's quite possible.
They're very
Well,
polarizing.
it's always been possible, but for some whatever reason, a lot of the stuff, a lot of the hate and rage and violence is more conscious and on the surface than it has been in recent years.
Yeah, I saw somebody with a MAGA hat the other day at Hopkins.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, and I really don't think so what would you do? Right. That's talk about boundary crossings. Like, I feel like that's something that people perhaps, right. People who believe in those political philosophies, like the MAGA group, like may not understand.
Let's not give them such a, educated term like political philosophies. Cause that just sounds like they actually have some kind of, wherewithal or thought process. Let's think of something mad stupid. Cause political philosophies, it just sounds too.
Yeah. I mean, Raquel, but
sensical.
Honestly, like I feel like
sensical.
There are people who are racist and bigoted who are
Democrats,
and also people who are racist and bigoted who are actually very book smart and very well educated. But they also
who. I feel, you know what? I'm not saying you're wrong.
And
I'm just saying when I've encountered people like that, the intellect leaves at some point.
Yes, it does. It does when it gets into issues that concern humanity.
Yeah,
the intellect leaves. Yes.
It's like, but that's not fact. This is science. Like when I'm just saying when I'm just like, but this is science. Yeah. I feel like whenever I encounter people, I'm not saying it's not there, but I'm saying the people I've encountered, you just get to a point where you realize oh, okay, you're just not using intellect. Like you're just
yes, yep.
This is where the thought process left. I've encountered, and I'm saying I encountered that more personally.
There are plenty of people that are just.
You're right. No, you're right. You are right.
What just turned on for you?
Because we talk all the time about how doctors they're biased.
Yeah,
and,
of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you're right. I was not thinking about that at all.
I mean, but you're thinking overall, if you have racist views, there's something unintellectual and not smart and just not fact based, right? And right, the people who believe those things, right, they on some level in their psyche need to believe that they are superior, and that is a very fragile way of defending one's only self-worth and protecting one's self-worth, because it's also not factually true that you are superior based on issues of identity, whether that be gender, race, age, you name it, go down the line, sexuality. And so but people believe those things, and sometimes that is a very, very deep root below the ground.
It helps them justify the way they treat certain people.
Of course.
It's that dissonance that
But when you bring those beliefs above ground by wearing, let's say, a MAGA hat to Hopkins, and then I am in the room with you.
He was in a white coat too, by the way, guys. So he was a doctor.
Wow. for me, there is a boundary that is being crossed. And so what do you do in this? I mean, I don't know what I would do if there's someone with a MAGA hat sitting in the room with me, but also someone's spouting things that are actually harmful to my life,
rhetoric, while you're
yeah. There's clearly a boundary that's being crossed there, right? So what do I do? And I think people can do different things here, right? Do you leave the room and then perhaps even share to some of your some of your colleagues or direct supervisors or whoever you're comfortable with that you were feeling a particular way in the room because of the things that were being said and you didn't necessarily feel safe? I mean, that's something that I would certainly try.
It's hard sometimes though, right? Because I used to struggle with feeling the need to educate so many people.
Yeah.
Just because the other possibility is me not saying anything, and I would just keep thinking about it. I would just be like, man, I should have said something. I can't believe I didn't and so now there has to be a certain level for me to say something, but it's hard to just walk away sometimes because it just eats away. And I'm sure it's not the same for everyone, but it just eats away at me. It depends on what the topic is, but certain things just eat away at me. You know
what I think it's a boundary crossing for a lot of Black folks? Well, for minority groups in general, microaggressions. Microaggressions are absolutely a boundary crossing because then you're left one, feeling some sort of discontent or hurt or some sort of feeling that is not pleasant, right? But then two, you're wondering whether it even fucking happened, right? Sometimes you're even questioning yourself. Again, bringing up this self-question is just like, did that really happen? Was it actually about my race? Am I being too sensitive? Is this actually a thing? Like, for example, there are plenty of times when I've gotten to an elevator and women have like moved over and grabbed their bag, right? Or clutch their keys a little bit tighter, or wait for me to press. Even though they get on the elevator first, they wait for me to kind of push the number of the floor that I'm going to before they do.
Why? So they don't get up, so they don't get up at the same floor?
I don't know though.
That kind of stuff makes me want to punch someone in the head. I'm sorry, like, it just makes me so mad.
I mean, I get, but I end up feeling like very mixed about it. But that's the thing that you're left dealing with on the other end, because like, right, like on one hand, right, like women go through things that men don't and might want to be more mindful of ways to protect themselves because of the things that they've gone through, and unfairly they then have to be mindful of other ways to protect themselves and be safe. I don't know what that person is going through, whether they've been a victim of assault or not. But then I also think about, like, is that person doing that only because I'm black and because I am male? Is there something about me, right? And then
Were you wearing your camouflage jacket with not in you? It's just a joke, because clothing should never really.
Of course,
it really shouldn't matter. You can get mugged by somebody in a suit.
But I mean it in a boundary. It's a boundary crossing in the sense that this person has now done something that you are left thinking about and left with a bad taste in your mouth.
Yeah, it stays after they leave.
With you.
Yeah, it stays with you.
So once that, and it's not necessarily something that you would address with the other person, but I guess your question is like, do I address it with the other person and do I not? But it is something that you do have to address with yourself, and like whether that be like telling yourself, whether it's like minimizing it or like actually saying, which I never really condone, but I think in some situations like it can help to compartmentalize. Compartmentalization isn't all bad, but talking to yourself about like how much time are you willing to give this some thought, whether it be actually like writing about it, journaling about it, getting those feelings out, podcasting about it as we do, but doing something to kind of like tend to the boundary violation and how someone like actually made you feel in this shitty way, and then perhaps like putting it aside or just turning your attention to other things and address it ongoing as it continues to come up.
I think it's just especially hard for me because just with like my personality in any dynamic, right? Like I am loud. I've been described as sassy multiple times. I didn't even know what the freak that word meant for the longest. Outspoken, like tend to be seen as like more northerner and stuff like that. But as a black woman, and like I consider myself like kind of dark skinned, I tend to be like what some people may see as like the stereotypical black woman. So, like sassy black woman always has like a quip or something to say, will say like, oh, I'm not going for this. So it's difficult for me because like my personality is, I guess, kind of stereotypical in certain sense. Like I think sometimes people will put you in a box that way. But when it comes to challenging someone on that certain level, no matter how I say it, no matter how calm I say it, it just fulfills another stereotype of like an angry black woman, right? So like I used to struggle more with this, but now I've just become more comfortable with who I am and being like, if that's who I am, that's just who I am. Because it's just certain stuff that I'm just not going to deal with. But struggling with just being identified as like an angry black woman, like that's just something that I always push back against, especially in the work environment, especially since there are no other black people where I work. And honestly, most of the time where these aggressions or these things happen is at work. And I do want to be professional, but I also realize that like if I don't say something to you about this now, and if it's someone I work with often, I don't really want to work with you anymore, and it severs our relationship and our ability to collaborate on things, right? Like if I feel like you're giving me microaggressions, I'm not publishing anything with you. I don't want to work with you. I don't want to give you access to data. If we're doing this, I don't want to talk to you about a conceptualization on a case.
Keep them at a further distance.
Yeah, which is difficult. So like I have to address it with the small groups we work in, but it's just the fact that I have to think about how I'm going to address something. Just doesn't always seem fair. Like sometimes when I get reactions, I wonder if the reaction is because what I said or just a person saying it. Because as much as I am on the podcast, like with like the whole joking and stuff like that, I'm not really like that at work to a certain extent, right? Like, because it's at work, like where everybody has their work persona. So it's just you trying to get the stuff that I want to get done. My work persona is so good. At one point, I think I cursed at something and someone was like, oh my God, I didn't know you cursed. Jesus. like we all know I cursed, but it's like we're at work or something like that. Or at one point, I was I try to keep the boundaries very firm. Right. Like at one point we were leaving lab meeting and I was like, I won't be here next week. My advisor is like, can you tell them why? And I was like, oh, I'm getting married. They're like, what? Like, yeah. But to me, like those boundaries are just there. So I feel like if certain things come up, it's very hard to not have a little bit of like normal Raquel come out. Especially if it's just something so freaking stupid.
Right.
But I'm just like,
but this is another boundary that I think really is unique to like our experience, right? Like, for Black folks, right, especially at work and in other professional settings, school included, right? It's like another boundary is like how much of your Blackness are you going to let out?
I don't think I've ever let out full Blackness at work.
Like how much of your own like individual genuine self, like whether it be your choice in music, your choice in hobby.
I don't even eat chicken around.
Your choice in
what
did you? Yeah.
Have you ever like? I know, right? I'm very serious.
Yeah,
like it's not even a joke. I do
boundary,
not eat fried chicken at work.
Yeah. Right.
I had watermelon the other day, and I thought I was being stared at, and I wasn't. But it just makes me uncomfortable.
Right.
Because it's just like, well, I feel like everybody does that. You feel like you do that too?
Yeah, definitely. There's just certain things that I'm not going to do, like, and it's almost like, it's like it's code switching, right? It's like putting on a different persona, and that switch is a lot harsher for us because we already know there are certain things about who we are and how we act that will not be received well, and it's not because it's not professional. It's not because it's tasteless or inappropriate. It's just because the work environment for the most work environments, in particular like white-collar jobs, they are white European standards, and other things are just really, really frowned upon.
Yeah, and I think that's a boundary that's necessary for me. I need that line.
And sometimes for me, like, it's about like pushing that boundary, whether it be with my choice in having a whole bunch of facial hair on my face, or having a part in my hair, or
I have purple hair right now.
Yeah.
So like that was a thing.
Yeah.
And I look like my patient.
Oh, those are like certain things like at work. Like I'm just like, yo, like I'm like this is a part of me. This is a part of my identity, and I'm not going to hide that. And there are like other things. Like occasionally, like I'll wear like some of my kicks to work, so I'll put on some Air Maxes and dress
kicks.
them up.
Your sneaks.
My sneaks.
I
yes.
know. Wish you were talking about it first until you say Air Max.
Kicks. I'm like a reformed sneakerhead. So there are times though, like I've done things like that, and for me, like that's just a small part of me sharing myself, and that's like a boundary that I'm willing to like play with at times, like certain things that I will share, but
physical appearance I think is a big thing.
Yeah, it is, but it's something that I'm very mindful of course, because both being Black and male, and me being the only brown person in my entire workspace.
Yeah, even so I got the purple hair, like I have purple twists right now, but there are multiple women who have colored hair at my job. This one girl has like purple hair. Another supervisor has bright pink hair. Another one has like it's like a pink and purple hair. I still felt uncomfortable when I first got it.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing for them to do it, but then it's different for me to do it, right?
Right.
Or wraps. Like I really like hair wraps.
Yeah.
It's like I wear them, but then I also understand like the difference when I do wear them, or anytime I change my hair.
Yeah.
Like it's just never underestimate the just shocking awe when a Black woman changes their hair and comes to work on Monday. Like Jesus, like.
Well, along those lines, right? Like one of your boundaries that you've talked about is like people asking a whole bunch of questions about your hair and wanting to touch your hair.
Yeah, I had a coworker touch my hair I forget which style, because I change my hair like every 6 weeks. She touched my hair. And when she did it, what did I say? I was like, you do realize that I was like, I know we're cool and we're actually pretty cool anyway. Like we bonded over some stuff. I was like, you do realize that this is not appropriate for anyone. And I was like, it's borderline appropriate for me. She said, yeah, I wouldn't just go up to doing this to someone. I was like, you know why not to, right? She said, yeah, you talked about it. I was like, okay. I just wanted to be understood. Like the one girl who I talked to about that before, she was like, oh, your hair I don't know if it was shiny, it was the braids. And she was like, it just looks so cool. I want to touch it, but I do know that is not appropriate. So I'm not going to do it. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, good job. And she was like very proud of herself for knowing that. But these are two separate people who do that. And they just want to focus on it or fixate on it. I had an advisor ask if my hair was weave once.
What?
Yeah. And then the lady in the room she kind of just froze. I thought it was hilarious.
Male advisor?
Yeah.
How did I know that?
Because women don't do that. And if they do, they just be like, where you get that from, girl? Like, I've been looking for that blend 4 weeks. I cannot get that color. Yeah, he did. He's like, I almost didn't recognize you. Is that a weave? And the girl in the room was like,
that is not something you asked.
I did tell him that as well. Yeah, he's a grown man.
So you didn't answer it?
No, I did answer it. I didn't really care, but I was just like, I was like, I'll answer you because you seem genuinely concerned, but you do realize you don't ask women this, right?
Good for you.
But yeah, and plus it was weave. I don't care.
Right.
It's just like,
yeah. See, that's man. Like
it's different stuff that different people would have to deal with, like just the same way, like with you and like wearing, like I'm sure you have to think about. You talked about sneaks or something like that. Like that's a boundary that we have to think about in different workspaces. Like where you
and it's not uncommon for people to wear like more dressed down clothing, but like for me, I like, there's been a couple of times where people have like worn jeans or whatever, but there's a mindfulness about how much I like my person, myself, like beyond my work persona, how much I actually want to present that, and like how much I want my colleagues to actually know about that. And and interact with that,
which I think is normal.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I think the other boundary with work is like doing the work, right? Like the work that you get, right? Like you said, like turning off your email during weekends. I mean, also, like whether you can say to a boss or an employer, like, I'm kind of swamped right now. Can I have an extension on this, or is there something that I can like do to manage the level of stress and workload that I am taking on? Because sometimes what's really hard for people to say is no. It's especially hard when there's an authority figure, but even with peers too, and not to get too far off from work, but even with colleagues as well, like saying no, I think it's for some people it's just really hard.
Yeah, my first response is always no.
You've said that, yeah.
My first response is always no. So then if I can help, it's a pleasant surprise. And I've gotten backlash about that, not even just from like coworkers, but from friends. Like one of my really, really, really good friends, she lives here. I love her to death. She asked me to help her move. I said, no, I don't help people move. And she was like, well, you're my friend. And I was like, I am your friend. And also, it's because I'm your friend, I know you can afford a mover. I don't help people move. And she was like, what if you asked me to help you move? I wouldn't, because if I don't move other people, I don't really move myself. I don't do it.
Yeah.
And she was like, man, I thought we were friends. I was like, I thought we were friends too, that she would know not to ask me to help you freaking move. Because there's just certain stuff that I'm not going to do. And it's not even, like this level of comfort was not always present. It's just too many times where I've gotten in a situation where I was pissed off or resentful towards the person, and the only person I could have been upset with was me, because I didn't set the boundary. So there's only so many times where I'm gonna go out and I did not want to be out, or I'm gonna help you do something and I'm pissed about and I got an attitude. And this can't be on anybody but me. But my first response is normally no, because most of the time I don't have time to do something. And then I'll say no. I'm pretty sure I can't do it, but let me get back to you. Because if you want a answer right now, then the answer is definitely gonna be no.
Right.
I don't do maybe, because that's too close to yes for me. But it just is. It's just too close.
This is a pretty this might be like a wall boundary for you almost.
It's
but when it comes to moving.
But everyone knows. Oh well, yeah. I will never help you move. No, I don't. Why?
Yeah,
Why is it? Why do people feel comfortable asking people that, man? I don't want to.
Yeah.
No. And sometimes the answer in the responses, they ask why. I'll be like, well, one, no is a complete sentence, but it's because I don't want to.
Yeah.
I'm allowed to not do stuff just because I don't want to.
Right. No, we all are.
And it's just like, and don't be mad at me just because she asked you first and you said yes and I said no, and I'm gonna be at home chilling while you moving boxes and you won't want to be there either. Right. I will do certain stuff with my friends, but the moving people, no, I don't want to.
Okay, so why was that originally hard for you though?
Because I didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings.
Yep.
And it's only not hurt anyone's because I tend to keep my circle very close anyway. So because my circle is very close to people who are in my circle are very close to me, and I don't want to hurt those specific people's feelings. Right. Because random people, I don't care. I don't know you.
And why didn't you want to hurt their feelings?
Why? Because I'm not.
Because you genuinely care about them.
Yeah, because I care about them. We cool.
Okay. So how did you get around that?
I just acknowledged the fact that if they weren't accepting of what I didn't want to do, then they weren't accepting of me.
Yo, that's powerful.
Me having to help you move hurts my feelings. I don't want to.
In your body.
In my body.
In your body.
So like if you're not comfortable with that, and if something as little as that makes us not friends, I mean, okay. One less birthday card to buy. It's not
quite that simple.
And it will never be that simple because you're my friend. Right. So no one is ever going to just walk away from that.
Right. Right.
But just saying, like, if this is the thing that stops you from being my friend, then this is the thing that stops you being my friend. But this is just who I am.
Yo, this is like such a powerful point here because I think it's like true friendships, true relationships. People have to be accepting of one another's limitations and like things that they don't like or don't want to do. And it's hard because you don't want to disappoint people. You don't want to hurt people's feelings. But this is like, I feel like this is a higher order of relating that we struggle all the time to kind of like get to, like whether it be like saying no to people or feeling free to like present what you want, knowing that it's not what the other person wants, and figuring it out.
And it gets easier with time.
Yeah. Man.
I just say no. We still cool. We kick it. She still get mad about it. I don't care. She moves a lot. She's military, dude.
You don't not care.
No, I like on that point, the fact that I set a boundary and you still get upset about it. No, I don't care. I don't. Yeah. Because I already told you it's no.
So you don't care at all that she gets upset about. Well, first of all, does she still get upset about the fact that you won't help her move?
No,
like,
she just tries to.
That doesn't make any sense.
She just makes smart comments like, "Well, let me not ask Raquel. Glad we agree on that." Like it's just like little side comments and stuff like that. But no, she's not mad. It's just like. They'll people look at me perplexed like, you really gonna say no? Yeah, I don't understand the problem. Like, you want to say no. Who wants to help somebody move?
No one.
Or even just little stuff like, oh, do you want to go to this party? No.
But you know what's hard then is like when you have a friend who really is in a jam and like can't afford movers.
That person may get help.
Right?
That person I will say, Brandon seems like he's free.
I volunteer my husband. He got you.
To do it. That person I'll consider, but nah. This person had a full-on 2-bedroom house, furniture. She's like the decor queen, everything. So I'm not moving this shit. You out of here. Mind?
Yeah.
No.
That's a lot.
I don't like you that much. I don't like anyone that much. I don't like, the thing is like, I don't move myself.
Yeah.
At a certain point, like I just don't do it anymore.
Yeah. The word no helps. It really does. Yeah. I think what is hard, right? Like going back to like employers, like it is hard to tell like a boss no because technically they can be like, well, you're fired, right? But I feel like there are ways that you can still negotiate your needs even when there are people like who are in power, right? There are people who are the authority figure, your employer, your boss, your and even sometimes in your family, your parents or your grandparents, right? I feel like there's still ways that you can kind of negotiate your needs by maybe you may not feel comfortable saying no, but can it have some caveats in there where you kind of only do part of it, right?
No, I don't like the room for that.
Well, I'm saying in situations where people actually see you're at the point where you don't feel bad at all about
certain things.
And not
that I don't have any soul, but it's just
I'm
like.
not saying you lack empathy.
I know you're not saying it. I just want everyone to know this. It's just certain things.
Right.
No.
But to be fully honest, like Raquel, like I think there's something like really, really healthy about that. Because at bottom, what you're saying is like, I am prioritizing myself over you.
Yep.
And that is healthy for me to do in this particular scenario. Now, right, like, I think there is such a thing as like sacrifice in relationships.
Definitely.
right? Where in that sacrifice, you are prioritizing the other person's needs over yours.
Yeah, and I
But
think that happens. I don't think there's any relationship where that's not going to happen at least one. A couple times, right?
times,
There's going to be
yeah.
give and take.
Yeah, there's give and take, and like some people, like for example, you may end up like doing some things that your friend wants to do that you adamantly don't enjoy, but you're deciding to do it anyway because it's your friend and you want to do something that they enjoy, and maybe they end up doing something with you, like whether it be like seeing a movie, like with a loved one, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I think that's pretty typical.
or maybe you're asking your partner for a favor and they're going out of their way to do something that's uncomfortable and they really want to go home soon, but they instead like stop at the CVS or they pick
Anytime
up
I take
food
Brandon
on the
to
way
an
home.
event and that takes me an hour to say goodbye, and he's just like, my God.
Yeah, sure, right?
And I still
But we
be
do those things. But like what you are essentially saying is like there are these situations where I am always going to prioritize myself, and because this is that important to me, and I hope as my friend that you would understand that.
Yeah, or even as a parent, I say no to my mom all the time. Not all the time. Like, for example, at one point, my mom, when planning a wedding, tried to convince me to invite someone that I hadn't seen in multiple decades. That's absurd. And I was just like, I'm not doing it. She's like, well, I am upset with this choice. I said, okay, I'm still not doing it because this isn't something that I want to do.
Right.
And it doesn't make any sense to me. And then what? She'll be upset for like a day, and then she'll talk to me. She's my mom. Like, that's my boo. What you gonna do? Like, we're not about to. I'm not about to argue about certain things, and I'm always very. That's the thing. I'm very firm about it. I name the boundary. I don't like.
And why the boundary is there.
Yes,
That's
sometimes
important.
why. Because if I done told you multiple times I'm not doing this,
Well,
this is on you.
Yeah. Sure.
But I named the boundary. I'm very firm with it. And it's not like I'm snapping about it. Like, I've had to set boundaries with my mother, just like she's had to set boundaries with me. Now, with me, my whole thing is I didn't ask to be on this earth. So if I ask you to do something, you're my mom. You should do it. But
Raquel, that is
I am
not
also very irrational.
reciprocity.
I'm very irrational when it comes to my mother. It's just the way it is. It's just the way it is. It's just how it's always going to be. But as a child in the situation, I'll just be like, no, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Like at one point, I think she wanted me to, what? She always tries to like stop by or something. And I'm like, I'm going to sleep. And she's like, well, I was just going to come over. And I was like, one, you shouldn't just be dropping by my house, Mom. And two, I'm going to sleep and I have work to do. If you come over, I'm not going to do the work. So you cannot come over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she was pissed. Okay. You know what else would be worse? If I caught her crying because I didn't get any work done and then she would feel bad.
Right.
Like the bottom line is, and she was on her way. I was like, oh, I don't know why you on your way. I did not tell you you could come over. You did not just drop by.
Right.
Two, Mom, I have work to do. And even if it's not work, even if it's just sleep,
Right.
if my mom's around, I'm going to want to hang out with my mom.
Right.
So I have to set that boundary that like, no, we can't hang out today.
Right.
She was upset, but it's my, like, what?
And you also knew that she would forgive you, get over it, and things would be fine.
Yeah, I also knew she was going to be upset, and I got over it.
See, I've like actually worked with some people where in those like same situations, right? Like they tell their parent no, and then the guilt of being a bad child, right? Being a bad son, being a bad daughter is like so potent. And it just happens so fluently. Like the moment like you say I can't or no or this isn't going to work for me, it's like bam, like I'm being a bad like, and that
happens to me a lot too.
And that's but I think that's when you end up in like these kind of like enmeshed kind of relationships where like you aren't allowed to say the word no. No is never a full sentence. It's not even a word you can say. And then your boundaries are so diffuse that there's no room for you. And that's what I meant earlier about like boundaries actually literally separate yourself from another person. It's not just a physical and material sense. Like you really, like when you're unable to say no or unable to put some sort of like, even in those situations where someone's like maybe guilting you or you're feeling like a bad XYZ because
and they may
of
not
it.
verbally be guilting you. You just sometimes they
Right.
do, but sometimes
Maybe-
you just feel it.
Maybe you just feel it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's through passive aggressive action, or maybe it is actually through them saying like very clearly like you're a bad, like how could you say this to me? Like I'm your mom, like I'm
That's
your
so messed
father.
up.
Like how could you not want me to come over, Raquel? Like why
I
why
got all
would
of
you do
that.
that to
I
me?
got all of that.
Like don't you want right? Like, but then
Don't you
like,
want to spend time with me? No, not right now.
not right now, right? Right, right.
Like, I'm
Right,
being honest, no. Like,
right.
but if it wasn't for the fact that I had so much important stuff to do, and in times when I do feel that way, because I feel like a bad daughter all the time, half the time, but like I'm not, but like it's just guilt. Think about all the things that you have done. Think about the ways that you are not a bad child or a bad
There's a
person
larger
or a
picture.
bad colleague. There's
Yes.
a bigger picture.
There's
You
a
have to
larger
take
picture.
your step away from this
Yes.
situation.
Yes.
Like, this is one situation. Think about all the times where it wasn't an issue to drive 2.5 hours just to hang out, where it wasn't an issue for you to like research stuff because half of our parents can't Google worth the darn, so we got to look up something that they could do. Think about all the times when you were able to do that extra deadline at work. Think about all the times where you did just show up to help your friend do something as simple as just chill with them. Think about that. You need to take yourself out of the situation and think about the larger picture. So the bottom line is, if you're going to feel crappy while you're doing it, it all comes back to, if you were going to feel crappy while you're doing it, if you were going to resent your friend, why do it? Like, it's just, it's stupid. Yeah. Like, I'm mad at the line that you crossed, and I really need to be mad at myself. And it just took too many times for me to be in a situation where I'm like, well, hurry up, I got somewhere to go. Why the freak did you come? When do we ever start at the exact time and end at the exact time? It's because sometimes you just really don't want to be there, or you plan too close. So I'm not going to show up somewhere with a stank attitude that I didn't really want to show up. I might as well have not showed up at all. Right. I'm not going to go somewhere and just be rude and downtrodden. I shouldn't have shown up at all. There's too many times of me making the wrong decision where I'm like, I'm not doing it.
Right.
I'm just not.
Absolutely.
And some people may still be in that situation where they haven't made enough wrong decisions to see the signs, but I have made enough wrong decisions to see like the signs, or checking in with my mood. And when I'm just in a jerk mood, it's like, this is half the time it's on me.
Yeah.
Like,
for not putting up the boundary in the
for
first
not putting
place,
up the boundary and be like, well, you suck it up, and you put on a smile, this is your fault. This is how I talk to myself, like, suck it up. You should have said no. You didn't.
Well, I think also like for people who don't recognize the signs, right? That like one of the signs that I think is really apparent is when it's like you now, like, your priority now becomes the other person's needs. Period. Like, and not just for that one particular moment, because we're not talking about autonomous sacrifice, right? We're not talking about a decision to prioritize a favor for another person, even if it's not what you would absolutely prefer. We're talking about like repetitive actions of someone who the relationship does not have appropriate boundaries, and now it's mostly about one person. Like, that is like one of the telltale signs of when like your boundaries have been invaded. Like when you literally become like your thoughts and your feelings are now centered around like how good you've been to the other person, whether you've actually met their need, if you've appeased their complaints, or if you've made them satisfied or not. Like, and when you end up in those kind of relationships, no isn't really an option. Doing things that you don't want to do have become more of a norm for you, and making sacrifice over and over has also become kind of your norm. There are also people who have, which we didn't get to talk about as much, who have boundaries that are way too rigid and just have way too many walls, right? Way too many like break boundaries.
Yeah.
Right. And for those folks, I think it's often, and I'm kind of summing this up so we can kind of get into like what you do about it. But for those folks who have too many like rigid boundaries, right? It's like we were saying before, like when cells don't let anything in, they die. Right. And so, you may keep out a lot of bad things, but you also keep out a lot of good things. Say
that again. That sounds like a good soundbite.
When you have a lot of rigid boundaries, a lot of issues that would for you absolutely end a relationship, or lots of reasons to not even begin relationships, and you're closed off to the opportunity of building relationships, you keep a lot of bad stuff out, but you also keep out a lot of good stuff.
Yep.
And there's definitely some angst in there, some fear.
You
right?
Can't grow.
But it leaves you stagnant, right? Like there's fear of all the bad things that could happen, whether that be distrust, betrayal, just hurt, manipulation, emotional abuse, someone who will disappoint you, somehow upset you at some point. So you keep up these really, really strong boundaries to keep all that stuff out, right? So you've prioritized your safety. Unfortunately, what comes with that, though, is that you lose out on intimacy, spontaneity, joy in general, and and the closeness, all the special things that could come with having another person in your life, you know? And so boundaries really are about I don't necessarily believe in like the trust benefit analysis kind of the cost benefit analysis kind of metaphor that people often use with relationships, because
I do.
I don't think it's that like clean cut in terms of like
when emotions are involved.
Yeah, because there's a lot you don't really know. You're just going off of speculation. The speculation is based on your experiences in the past, really. Right? These are like, you don't really know, like you're getting close to somebody. You don't really know unless they've actually like done things that are concrete that tell you like this person is absolutely going to hurt you. They've been kind of wishy-washy and avoidant. Then that's a whole nother thing.
That's really when like I find people more so doing the cost benefit analysis at like when it's just like, am I staying in this relationship? Am I not for a random reason? Because like this woman has done this for the 5th time and I have asked her not to, and it is really starting to be destructive to me. Do I need to stay here?
Yeah.
Like it's more, I see people do it. I feel like it's more helpful towards when you're like at that point where it's just like, am I going to stay here?
Yeah.
And normally the things that brought you to that point are like those detrimental actions.
Okay. Yeah. So that kind of makes sense to me. Like I think I was thinking more so in terms of people who are thinking about starting a relationship. Because I'm like, in those situations, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't really know. Unless there have been things that this person has done. Like you have some sort of like they've done certain things that are actually the thing that you want to avoid. Whether that be cheating or whether that be manipulating or guilty, like whatever the case may be. And then talking about those things doesn't get you anywhere.
Yeah,
like, that's different.
That makes sense. I'm more of a just getting into the relationship.
You're talking about like
anyway.
whether you want to like whether you
get
wanna,
into
like,
a relationship.
Get into
like what's the bit like if you're thinking just do it. I mean like
yeah.
So like I agree with you because I wouldn't really do a cost benefit analysis. I would just do it. Like I would just make sure I protect myself in all sense of the word, physically, emotionally, not bound myself off, but like still protect myself. I need to do that in any sense. But what's the worst that's gonna happen?
Right.
Like you protect yourself in a certain way. You don't have a child with this person. You need to walk away. You can walk away. You just do it. Like what's the problem? Because you can't. You're right. You can't do the analysis. What's like?
Right,
I don't know. You don't know where the relationship is gonna go.
Right.
So how does that help in the beginning? How does that help?
Not in the beginning. Right?
Yeah.
Not in the beginning. I don't think it helps all that much.
Me
because
either.
Your information is really limited.
Because you haven't taken the time to
do it.
Do it. So it's like it's no point. It's premature.
You're trying to forecast the future, and a lot of it, I think, often ends up about like just some fear about what could happen that wouldn't be right. And you don't really know how things are going to go until they're actually going, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times I see individuals get into relationships because they actually do the opposite. They get into a relationship and they fall in love with the possible potential of this one person.
But there have been signs and evidence all along to suggest this is a bad idea.
Yeah.
There have been boundaries that have been crossed all along, and you just kind of like suggest that it's okay. Yeah, see, that's completely different.
And you fall in love with the potential, and then this, like, say you're like, oh, I like what this person could be. First of all, this male, this female never said that they were going to be the person that you're talking about. You fall in love with the potential of a person, and they may never become that person. And then you feel cheated,
right?
And that's not on them. I was wearing sweatsuits every time we went out before we started dating. I never told you I was going to stop. I was telling you we had to be Dutch, to go Dutch for every date beforehand. I never said I was going to stop.
Yeah.
I had a bunch of male friends before you. I never said I was going to stop. You decided in your mind that as we got into this relationship that I was going to change these things. And then when I didn't, you felt cheated. But this was never our agreement. Like you fall in love with the potential of someone. You have an idea for what you want them to be. One, deciding to change someone, there's always an issue with that. And two, that's on you.
Right.
Like I never said that was gonna be what happened, and then you feel cheated because you put all that time in.
Right.
And it's so.
And again, like the problem with that there is just that there probably were boundaries that were crossed all along.
Yeah,
right?
but you thought that you'd be okay with changing them, and they never said they would.
Right. So one of the things, let's get into like how you begin to like maintain healthy boundaries, because we're right there on something. And one of the tips I think it's important for people to
or initiate them and maintain them, right? Because before you maintain them, you even got to start them.
That's very true. So how to initiate and maintain healthy boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
One is don't try to fix people. Don't try to you don't go into a relationship with the idea that you are trying to change another person. So often in couples therapy, right? Like partners come in like, my partner is the wrong one. I am the right one. Please tell me that I am right and my partner is wrong.
They want you to be the referee.
Right. And the other person has the same feeling, and they're like, we are here to change my partner.
We're here for you to tell us who's right.
We're here to tell
who's
you
right, Dr. Hopkins.
and to change my partner. And the reality is, the situation is like, you like this person for certain reasons that you may be well aware of, but some that you are not. And actually, couples therapy is about each individual partner not only coming to a better understanding of who their partner is and why, but also changing themselves. For partners changing themselves. Because if you don't, then you are likely to repeat the same exact patterns in another relationship. It'll be different person and similar issues that are popping up. Perhaps not to the same degree, perhaps not in necessarily the same venue. It may not necessarily be about responsibilities in the household, but it could be in terms of responsibilities regarding finances. Like different things will pop up because we as humans, we enact the same interpersonal habits in relationships with each relationship. We come in with unconscious fantasies and ideas about what we would like to receive, who we'd like this person to be, and we inevitably act on those things and alter the way that our partner responds to us. So in couples therapy, it really is about coming to a better understanding of your partner, but also changing certain things about yourself, because if you don't, you enact those same things in other relationships. So in terms of maintaining healthy boundaries, it's not about fixing another person. Once you do that, like you'll always be working to try to do things to change them, all along kind of missing some of the needs that you need to be fulfilled.
Yeah, in family therapy, we think about the unit. So, and I'm sure you do the same thing in couples therapy. So it's like,
sure. Yeah, exactly.
It's not just about one person, like it's about the entire unit. So I'm not here to fix, the child. I'm not here to fix my husband. I'm here to fix us, because we as a whole
of how you relate.
Yeah, it's how exactly. It's how you relate to each other. So it's just there isn't one person. We're a unit.
Right.
So when we break something, we both got work to do, right? Like when something gets broken down, we both have to do work. We both have to contribute to that.
Yeah.
So that's just the biggest thing. I also feel like you have to name your limits.
Yes.
Don't be. It's just
name and know. Know and name.
Know
what
name.
they are first.
Know and name your limits.
Yes.
Know and name them, because your boundaries should not. I'm gonna just call them the equator, because everyone knows the equator. What's the definition? It's the imaginary line that divides your boundaries should not be an equator. It shouldn't be imaginary. Name them and know them,
right.
And so that when people do cross them, if you know them, you name them, you can actually openly talk about it.
Yeah.
But like one thing that gets me when I've had conversations with people when they're just like, well, this person should have done this. Did you tell them that? No. Why the freak should they have done that then? Right. I don't understand. Like, I'm not on your side.
And some people also feel like, well, if they cared about me, they would know me enough to do this particular thing.
Oh my God. You must hear that line a million times. There is no way you don't hear that line a million times. That's a relationship line. That's like, well, if they love me, what does that have to do with love? What are you talking about? You were upset about one
about
thing.
Mind reading.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, you're talking about mind
reading.
Oh
my God, you must hear that all the time. If they had cared about me, if you had cared about them, you would have told them this was a problem. This is your fault.
Or the other thing is like, caring about yourself, right? It's like develop a healthy respect for yourself. Like, I think this is like a centerpiece of boundaries, because when you respect yourself, your needs become important enough to regard. And that's why, Raquel, like when you were saying, like with your friends, right? Like, you do not help them move, because it is important enough for you to not go through that physical labor, knowing when it could be avoided, right? Like, you respect yourself enough to be like, I'm not going to put myself in that situation. I don't
want to.
Yeah. Right.
Or you're right, because if I didn't realize that like this is a hard no, or even like going to certain events where they're like, oh, you want to do this? I don't, so I'm not going to. Mm-hmm. Why is it such a foreign concept for us to say no because we don't want to do something?
Right.
Why is it adult like to do stuff? We do as adults, we do plenty of stuff we don't want to do. I don't want to pay bills. I don't want to go to work. If I had my way, I would just hang out with Beyonce and Blue and certain room all day. I don't get to do that. So why is this such a foreign concept? The looks I get when I'm like, no, and they say why, and I say because I don't want to. That was it.
Yeah.
I don't have another engagement. I don't want to. Why is it so weird? Yeah. Don't you like the pushback? Like, just be like, oh, well, I had something else to do. Oh, I don't have anything else to do. I just don't want to. I'm free as a bird. Don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Why is that odd?
Why do you think so? I mean, for me, like, I think people are just like, well, if you like don't want to, then that means that you don't care about me and you don't want to prioritize me over your want. And that is like, and for some people, for some reason, that's like really shocking to people. Right. And I actually agree with you. Like, I don't necessarily in this moment, like, I really can't think of a reason for like how that's become like our norm as people, but I think it is like whether you want to or not is usually never a good reason.
No, they want more.
Yeah.
And then when I'm just done and I'm just like, no, I don't want to.
Yeah, yeah. But
like, y'all want to get some food though?
Yeah.
Like, when y'all done moving, I'm sure you'll be hungry. Would you like to get a meal? Or you know what it could be? The other people, they asked other people and they said yes. Okay. Oh no, I don't care. Yeah. Like, that has nothing to do with me.
Right,
like,
right,
it's
right,
just it.
Yo,
imagine like have it as a complete sentence. Have it as a complete sentence. Say no, and then someone say why. And like, first of all, I don't know why you asking me why, but I'll be nice and answer you whatever because I don't want to.
Yeah. But also, right, like that, the logic there of like what people may think when they hear that, right, is that like, well, you don't want to, that means you don't care about me. It's like, well, like in your situation, like that's not the situation that you keep talking about with moving. Like that's not really the case. Like you care about them. This is just something that you can't, like you don't want to do because you know how it's going to affect you.
And since when is friendship? Since when they're sacrificing certain relationships? But since when are any like relationships? Since when are sacrifices the cornerstone of it?
Yeah, exactly.
I did this for you. Okay. If you didn't want to, you should have said no. And that's what people will say to you. If you didn't want to be here, you shouldn't be here. If you didn't want to do this, you should have said no.
Right.
But then when you say no, it's like, what you mean?
Right. So if you show up unhappy or unwilling in some way, yeah, that's probably the response that you're likely to get. It's just that, well, then you should have said no.
And you don't want me to show up as a jerk.
Yeah, right.
It's a terrible place.
So respecting yourself first enables you to, I think, do a couple of things that are also good tips for maintaining healthy boundaries. And that's, it helps you to give yourself permission. Giving yourself permission to actually like vocalize, make space for your needs, even when it may not be the most important thing to another person, or they may outwardly disagree, or they may want something completely different.
Because the permission is based on your self-care,
yes,
right? Like
it is.
I'm okay to say no, because if I go there, I will not be being a good friend because I will be upset. If I go there, I will be distraught. And if I go there, I could be doing something else. So it's okay for me to say no because I genuinely will not be a productive part of this encounter if I go. Right. And that's okay. Right. Like if you have to have justifications with yourself, that's fine to make yourself feel more comfortable. If you have to say, it's okay for me to say no because I don't want to. It's okay for me to say no because I feel forced. You don't always have to give justifications to other people. It just may help you to feel more comfortable with the situation and give yourself permission.
See, I always like to add context because I know that people often go into that space of like, well, maybe you don't care about me because you're not doing this particular thing for me. So I do often provide context, and I say like, and I'll say like why it is like I'm enforcing this kind of boundary, and that does both ease a sense of guilt to some degree, like depending on who you are, but also I think allows that other person to be understanding of your no.
I get that,
and preserve the and preserve the bond, the intimacy, the relationship in itself.
Yeah, I totally understand that.
Because understanding has to be the cornerstone. But like again, like I think to your point, like not everyone is understanding of that I don't want to piece.
Yeah, and then even with I get having to make sure that they understand that it's not like a dislike or a not caring about them. But like anyone who is close enough with me does know that I love your face, but that's a no.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm not even going to say, so I see where you're coming from. Like, I want you to understand and I want you to get that, and you don't want them to feel like you don't care about them. But anyone who is friends and family with me, like I end every single phone call with, I love you. Right. And every time we end an encounter, I say, I love you. So, I love you.
Right.
I'm not, but this is a no.
Yep. So respecting yourself allows you to also to give yourself permission. It also allows you to be assertive, and being assertive and actually saying the thing that you want. It's like very similar to like naming your limits.
It can be really hard though. Being assertive is difficult.
It is. It is. But
because you don't want to be a jerk.
Right. You don't want to be a jerk. I mean, well, that's what's hard about boundaries in general.
Right. You don't want. It's like, oh, I don't want them to. But you know what? In that aspect, I also give the person, like, if you want to talk, like, in order to be my friend, you have to be more vocal anyway, right? Like, you can't not. I'm not going to read your mind. I'm not going to, because you're not my patient.
Right.
And that's just not my role with you.
Right.
And I don't want to take on that role. So you have to be vocal if you have a concern. So if I say no and I hurt your feelings, you need to tell me I hurt your feelings. I'm going to assume everything is fine. So I just don't want to be in a position where I feel like I'm dealing with my patients.
Yeah.
You know, so it's hard to be assertive, but everyone in my circle is like, you should feel comfortable enough with me to feel like this is one of the few spaces. If you don't feel assertive at work, that's fine. But with me, if you have a problem, tell me you have a problem.
Right.
I don't do well with that passive. What is it? Passive aggressive.
Yeah.
I need aggressive. And it's not even like it's not even like you got to be like loud with it or come out and be someone who you're not. I don't expect like a mirror personality, but I expect you to have enough respect for me that you talk to me about the situation.
Right.
Because if that's the case, then we don't really need to be cool, because I don't need to be worrying and tiptoeing around your feelings. I don't need to be wondering if you're upset about something.
Right.
I got better things to do in my time.
Right.
I'm not going to do it. So being assertive is hard, but I would hope that you have enough respect for me and enough love for me to know that if you say something to me, I'm not going to take it like a ridiculously terrible way. Because sometimes it's hard to be assertive because you've been assertive once with someone and they flip their shit.
Yeah.
I would hope you have enough respect and love and care for me to understand that you talk to me about something, I will address it, and that's what we're going to do. I'm not going to flip out.
And that's built on trust. And I think that's that does make it a hard. That does make it especially hard for some people to be assertive, because they may not trust that the person will respond well, or they may invalidate their need, which is, and I always say, right, like the disavow, I think, is the most, when someone like disavows what you feel or invalidates it, I think that's worse than when your feelings are just hurt outright. So people, often want to avoid that, but I think when you're able to be assertive with people and respect the things that you want, when you're able to respect the things that you want, being assertive with people, I think, comes a little bit easier. I think just the last couple that I think are important to mention are practicing self-awareness, and along with that, particularly tuning into how you feel, like knowing that this is a particular thing that you may not want to do. This is a boundary that you may need to set because you feel XYZ way, because you know that if you say yes when you really mean no, that you will feel resentful, or that your body will hurt from moving, or that or you might feel used because this person doesn't think of you in the same way that you tend to be considerate of other people. And so it's just really important to be like tuning into yourself, right? These are all kind of floating around the same concept of being like valuing yourself enough to think about yourself and regard the things that you think about and feel about as important enough to act on and to be aware of and to actually reflect on and think about. So I think practicing self-awareness and specifically tuning into your feelings, that's just an important step.
Yeah, and I think a good part of that is considering like past encounters where something similar may have happened.
Yes.
And thinking about like your reaction to that in another sense, right? Like, so if you're tuning into your feelings, this isn't the first time you've been asked to do something. This isn't the first time you've been upset or sad or anything like that. How did you manage it? How did you get there? So you can prevent yourself from doing it again, because like there is nothing, in my opinion, there's nothing worse than being upset with someone because they crossed an imaginary boundary. Mm-hmm. And that's not fair to that person, and that's not fair to the quality of your relationship. And like you're the only person you can really be upset with is yourself.
And it's not fair to you.
It's not fair to you, right?
Upset with yourself for something that hurt you.
You're absolutely right. It's not fair. It's not fair to yourself. So it's just like, especially if, for a lot of times, I think like in my relationship, sometimes I would get upset about that typical. Not even a lot of times. There's not a lot of times to be upset in my relationship, but like just having a boundary that I didn't state, and then I would just tell like my husband, and he'd be like, "Oh, okay, cool, I won't do that," That's it.
Yeah.
It takes like one sentence.
Yeah.
And that's also why you should be mindful of who you choose to be with, because it really should just be, it's really like, oh yeah, I'll chill on that.
Yeah.
It's that simple. And once I realized it was that simple, it's just like, God, I'm an idiot. I've been irritated with this for a while. I should have been said something. Right. And there's nothing I could do about it now, but it's just, it should be, you're worried about hurting other people's feelings, and I totally get that. But also understand, like, trust, don't take away the person's opportunity to improve. When you don't trust them with, like, talking to them about the boundary or talking to them about anything, you're kind of taking their shot to improve. You're kind of not trusting that they'll be able to do it. Mm-hmm. And that's not fair to you. That's not fair to the relationship, because the relationship could improve. Just try it out. And honestly, if it does come across poorly with the boundary and you feel like they weren't receptive to it, that's another thing you got to see if this is a person you want to continue to have a relationship with anyway. You can't really do that with family. You can't totally walk away. So I'm told.
Some people
right?
do.
I said so I'm told.
And some people and some people end up in situations where they absolutely have to.
And that's okay. Give yourself permission to do that. Protect yourself about the person. Who do you like? There's always I hate when people say, like, they don't want to be selfish. It's necessary to be selfish. You take yourself with you everywhere. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and I think we also, like, confuse selfishness for actually just regarding oneself at all, and that's one way in which people have a hard time of actually, like, caring for themselves. But I think your point is well taken, right? Like, like, trust is one of those things that is obviously going to be shaped by your own personal preferences or boundaries and what your past and present has been like, and
with your age, right? Yeah. Like 30, I'm 30. I'm sure this isn't like, oh, it's 20, 25. There's so much growth. I love getting older because there's so much stuff that I care less and less about as I get older. The thing that makes it easier for me to set work boundaries is because now family stuff and my self-care is at the apex. Yeah. So if it's a choice, and it started in grad school. There was one time there was a choice between getting an A paper and getting an extra hour of sleep. I took that B. I did not care. Yeah. Like, it's just, as you get older, you start to realize what's more important. And to me, I have never regretted submitting like a paper a couple days late. Not a couple days late, not like submitting assignments, because I hate when students do that. I don't do that. I've never regretted submitting to, like, a publication a couple days later than I expected to. I have regretted not spending time with family and friends because my laptop was in my face. Those are the things that, like, are the biggest aspect of me. So, like, as I have gotten older, it's been easier to set those boundaries, because it's been so important to me to set a firm line between work and home and school and stuff like that. Like, when I'm home, I prefer to be home. There are times when I have my laptop up and stuff like that. But even something as simple as, like, if I'm on my laptop next to my husband who's watching the game, I still feel like that counts as, like, attention, because we're, like, in the same vicinity. Like, it's just, the older you get, the more you realize, like, I mean, I don't want to do this. And it's not just like helping somebody move. It's like, I understand that my job as an employee is to help my boss get rich, like, to help you. But today it's going to be a no for me. Yeah. And if they say why, it's because I don't feel like I can put in the right. What's a good way to get out of it? I don't feel as though I can direct the right amount of care and attention that this assignment needs at this time. So I feel like I need to extend the deadline, because I have concerns about the quality of work I will be given to you if I gave it to you Monday instead of Friday. Spout that. Don't nobody want low quality work. So just say, I just have concerns that if I give you the work by this date, the quality will be significally less than it would be on Friday.
Can we put that in, like, an email template?
Dude, when I tell you, I have gotten so much better at fluffing this crap up that I say to people, I just feel like I could give them some more time. And no one can deny, like, oh, okay, well, you gave it to me on Monday. Told you Monday was going to be poor quality. We talked about this, right? Right. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. I feel like I can dedicate more time to it. Right. I feel like this is the time it needs. And if you want poor quality work, I just want you to know we agreed to this, and it's okay. There are spelling errors. Right. Spacing is off. There are 3 fonts, but that's on you.
Well, in there, you're both naming your limitations, right? You are being assertive, saying what you need to say, giving yourself permission to do that, and practicing some self-awareness.
And justifying why. The quality will be worse.
Right.
I want to give this thing more energy.
Not that there needs to be a justification all the time. No. Right? Because no is a complete sentence.
But I do that more with work anyway, because then I'm not trying to lose my job.
Yeah, sure. And I would say, just lastly, we touched on a lot of different things, but setting appropriate boundaries are hard, whether your boundaries are too rigid and you want to kind of pull them back a little bit to avail yourself to more close relationships, or if your boundaries are too diffuse and you need to be able to separate yourself from other people, both mentally and otherwise, it's challenging, right? And so it's important to seek support and take care of yourself. And while you're doing that, changing a dynamic in a relationship is incredibly, incredibly hard, especially one with family members, because you know them, for most of them, like you know them your entire life. There is a way of relating and an expectation that has been set, and that continues far beyond conscious effort. It's kind of the way that you've known. It's the air you breathe within the relationship, and so it's very hard
I like
to.
that.
it's hard to change those things, you know. Well, behavioral patterns and relational dynamics are very hard to change in general.
That's why we have jobs.
Yeah, and that's why we have jobs, and that's why and that's why therapy takes time, and that's why you hear us talk about being and working with people for a number of years, because it does take time. But people also do that, I just want to say, because they realize just how worth it and beneficial it can be, and how amazing, I think, not to use hyperbole, but really like how different things can be when you actually are on the other side of some of those changes. And so while you're trying to make those changes, like, it's important to seek support and take care of yourself, because change isn't hard. Change, oh gosh, like,
Man,
change
I was
is
just like,
always hard.
Yeah.
It's always hard.
It's
And
going
that's
against the
why-
grain.
Right, and that's why going against the grain, absolutely, and that's why sometimes we resist it or put it off, or it's easier to give in than it is to maybe say it no. But if you're in that situation again, and you're trying to enforce a healthier boundary where maybe there wasn't one before, it'll be hard. You can expect that, and seeking support is the way to go.
Yeah, it gets easier to say no. It used to be difficult, but now it just like rolls off my tongue. No. like, I'm just,
What's your
it's
favorite word,
amazing.
Raquel?
No. Actually, no, this is so many favorite words. No, what you're not gonna do. Like,
Words, phrase.
yeah, like this is
Like, that was like 5 words.
that, or I don't understand the question. When people act like, when they be like, why? I be like, oh, I don't understand the question. I thought I answered you. I'm walking away.
Raquel's favorite phrase is.
Yeah, I'm confused. And most of the time when I say I'm confused, I'm not. It's like, I'm confused because I thought I told you to do that and you didn't.
Yeah.
So, can you hear me? Like, are you not?
I'm enforcing a boundary. Are you
Yeah,
not
like,
picking up
what?
on
I
this?
don't
Like,
understand.
this is my
Because it's different, right?
expectation.
You said it. So, I used to have this thing about not repeating myself, because if I made a statement and I made a boundary, this is like hardcore, rigid crap. If I made a boundary and then you crossed it and I'm like, oh, I told you that I didn't like this and you did it, you don't respect me or who I am as a person, so we're done. And it's just like, I know, it was insane. I was a crazy person, dude. You used to just be like cutting people off left and right, and it would literally be, oh, I told you I don't like that and you did it again, we're done here. But then I became like a normal human being. That's some real immature shit way to think. Like, if I can grow from that, I poke fun at my old self all the time. It's growth, right? It's growth, because that was just some dumb shit. But anyway, never will I feel bad poking fun at how awful I used, like how like my thought process used to be bad, because they did used to be bad and they grew.
But I think this is like an important example of like how, like, when you start tending to your boundaries, you realize there's like maintenance, and you gotta like tune into them and like realize like maybe like you made an adjustment here and then it got a little bit better, and maybe you want to pull back on certain things. But communication is usually what helps to make those things happen, right? And make those adjustments as you need to. Communicate with the other person, and also absolutely don't overlook this, communicating with yourself, understanding your why, understanding why you feel the way that you feel, why you're thinking the way that you're feeling, why you want to make a change, and being clear about those things so that the communication can then flow freely.
Awesome. Well, I think we've kept you enough today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Find us anywhere you can find a podcast. We also have social media. We have Facebook. We have Twitter. We have Instagram. Also, we do really appreciate being asked to speak at certain events. So please feel free to reach us at theblackunconscious@gmail.com. We love speaking about like doing guest spots, but also even just to the clinical expertise that we have on multiple topics. If you want to talk about trauma or relationships or family therapy or anything, stigma, we would love to be on your show, at your event and stuff like that. So reach out to us.
We've got a couple events coming up this spring 2019, and we look forward to sharing those things with you all, but we are absolutely looking for other events. And also, I'll give a shameless plug for myself. I am officially moving my private practice to DuPont Circle. I'll be moving into that office this coming Monday.
Look at you!
I'm really excited about
growth.
That. Yeah. So I am accepting new patients. If you're interested or just want to learn more about my practice, you can find me at drjshopkins.com. That's drjshopkins.com. So thanks.
Thank y'all so much. Y'all have a great day.
We'll see you next time.
Or you'll hear us next time.
Same thing.
It's not the same. If it was the same thing, it would be called the same thing.
Are we gonna end this?
I'm gonna. Bye.